Prime Minister Narendra Modi's West Asia outreach, India is now set to host President Hassan Rouhani of Iran. Connectivity and energy security will be high on the agenda as Prime Minister Modi holds talks with Rouhani over the weekend. Why is this visit significant and what does India hope to achieve from it? WION's Ramesh Ramachandran reports.
It is seldom that the President of Iran travels abroad, and more seldom still that an Iranian leader visits India. This week, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India hosts President Hassan Rouhani. Rouhani's visit to Hyderabad and New Delhi is only the third visit to India by an Iranian head of government in the last 15 years. His predecessor, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, visited India in 2008, and Mohammad Khatami was chief guest at India's Republic Day celebrations in 2003. Rouhani's visit takes place within days of Prime Minister Modi concluding a whirlwind tour of the Arab world and the Gulf, and 1 month after New Delhi rolled out the red carpet for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. India and Iran enjoy civilizational ties. The two countries shared a border till 1947. Iran is among the top suppliers of crude oil to India. Importantly, India continued to engage with Iran at the time of sanctions. Iran is a priority in India's strategic calculus insofar as connectivity with Afghanistan, Central Asia and beyond is concerned. When the Indian Prime Minister visited Tehran in 2016, the transport ministers of India, Iran and Afghanistan signed a trilateral transit agreement in the presence of Modi, Rouhani and President Ashraf Ghani of Afghanistan. Also signed on the occasion was an agreement on the development of Chabahar port. India has committed $85 million for equipping the port, which benefits India and the landlocked Afghanistan in transshipment of goods and essential commodities, including most recently a consignment of wheat from India to Afghanistan via Iran. Chabahar helps India and Afghanistan overcome the handicap of Pakistan denying overland transit through its territory. It is also an integral element of the international North-South transport corridor which links South Asia with Eurasia. Iran's Transport Minister Abbas Ahmad Akhundi has told WION that the Chabahar port project remains on course to meet India's deadline of becoming fully operational by the end of this year.
Discussed with one Indian company just for operation. Our negotiation is finalized, and I hope that we can sign it up an interim contract just in this January and hand in the port to them. So I'm very hopeful and very optimistic that we can operate with Indian company very soon.
Chabahar is in the vicinity of the Gwadar port in Pakistan, which a Chinese state-run company will operate on a 40-year lease. The so-called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, is an offshoot of China's Belt and Road Initiative. The $60 billion project extends from China's Xinjiang province to Pakistan's Balochistan province, culminating in the Gwadar port overlooking the Arabian Sea. India views the Gwadar port with suspicion. It sees Chinese presence at Gwadar, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, and Kyaukphyu in Myanmar as part of a strategy to encircle India. One outstanding issue, though, is that of the Farzad B gas field. India and Iran are still to come to an agreement on the award of contract for development of the gas field to Indian oil companies. New Delhi and Tehran could also compare notes on the status of Indian national Kulbhushan Jadhav, who India says was kidnapped in Iran and produced in Pakistan. India is fighting the case at the International Court of Justice at The Hague. Ramesh Ramachandran, WION.
These last 6 months have been the coming of age of India's West Asia diplomacy, an exchange by the Indian and Israeli Prime Ministers. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Palestine and the upcoming visit of Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. And with each visit, India has managed to step over numerous fault lines in the region. In July 2017, Narendra Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel and thus began the Modi-Bibi bromance, which translated into deeper ties between the two countries. From collaborating in the supply and manufacturing of sophisticated defense equipment to working together in the innovation and cybersecurity space, India and Israel have come a long way. And it only took 6 months for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reciprocate and to visit India. Such deep ties with Israel command a balancing act of sorts. And so, last week, Prime Minister Modi went to Palestine. A visit to Palestine has little to do with the usual bilateral exchanges of purchasing arms or boosting trade ties. It's more about sending a message that India will dehyphenate ties between Palestine and Israel. And for New Delhi, it is also an opportunity to emerge as a potential peace broker in West Asia. Look at the situation with the US President Donald Trump recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. America can no longer claim the position of an impartial mediator. It never was to begin with. But now the Palestinians reject their mediation, and India then emerges as a viable alternative. This strategic maturity is only bolstering India's case. 5 days after visiting Ramallah and calling Yasser Arafat one of the world's greatest leaders, Prime Minister Modi will host one of Israel's biggest enemies, if not the biggest now, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. Even while Iran has been slapped with international sanctions, India retains robust trade ties with that country. Iran is India's 4th largest oil supplier, but the relationship has not been without tensions. The elephant in the room is the pressure on Iran from Washington to abandon its nuclear plans. And on this tricky issue as well, India has all its bases covered. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump have struck an unlikely friendship. After the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Washington last year, the first daughter has come to India, and ties between the two countries have only deepened. Trump has appointed Indian origin men and women in key government positions and toned down threats against H-1B visa holders. This flurry of visits in under 1 year is a reflection of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy. For the benefit of India, he has been able to deal individually with different countries, even if they are at loggerheads with each other. But coming back to the Iranian president, the man who's visiting, Hassan Rouhani is considered a moderate leader, bridging a pragmatic approach with the ideals of the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Rouhani has managed to pull Iran out of the diplomatic isolation it once faced. Our next report introduces you to the man at the helm and recounts his journey to the pinnacle of power in Persia.
Moderation and prudence was the slogan on the back of which Hassan Rouhani stormed to power in a keenly contested election in 2013. Revamping an administration which was full of hardliners who had been handpicked by the former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was no easy task. But Rouhani wasn't an outsider in the corridors of power in the deeply conservative state. Hassan Rouhani has been an important player in Iran's political setting right from the days of the revolution. He was an influential leader during the Iran-Iraq War in 1980 to 88 and held several important positions in the defense establishment of Iran's post-revolution regime. In the difficult period of the post-war scenario in 1989, Hassan Rouhani was appointed as the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. He also served as the Deputy Speaker of the Iranian Parliament from 1996 till 2000. However, it was as the negotiator of Iran's nuclear program that Rouhani would shine through for his approach of moderation. So when Rouhani seized power in 2013, one of his key campaign promises was to end the isolation of his country. Iran was considered a rogue state, pursuing a nuclear bomb to give itself regional clout. The pariah state was under crippling sanctions, which had pushed the Iranian economy into freefall. But in 2015, Rouhani struck a nuclear deal with the United States under Barack Obama and 5 other world powers. Iran agreed to open up all its nuclear facilities for inspection. In return, the crippling economic sanctions were lifted. However, the change of guard in the White House threatens to unravel the Iranian nuclear deal. President Donald Trump, throughout his campaign and then after his election, maintained that this was the worst ever deal negotiated by the United States. He's been threatening to pull out of it ever since. The other 5 countries which are also signatories to the deal, France, Russia, Britain, China and Germany, have been urging Trump to uphold it. Amid this rhetoric, Rouhani was voted to power for a second term in May 2017, but the honeymoon was short-lived. His approach of moderation and pragmatism has brought few results domestically. He's faced protests and a backlash from the more hardline elements, and despite being a popularly elected leader, he remains subservient to the supreme leader of Iran, Sayyid Ali Hosseini Khamenei. Rouhani's second stint as president has been marred by protests. Despite the economic sanctions being lifted by the West, Iran last December witnessed widespread unrest due to galloping inflation and unemployment. The Iranian government blamed the CIA, in cahoots with the Saudis and Israel, of having orchestrated the protests. There was much speculation. Some said that the fundamentalists were getting back at him. Others insisted that the former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was behind the protests, which spread to many cities. Almost simultaneously, Iran also witnessed protests from several women against the law that mandates the hijab. Vida Mohaved became a symbol of protest against the directive that the hijab for women is compulsory in public spaces, when she stood atop a utilities box on a popular avenue holding a headscarf on a stick. It's safe to predict that Iran hasn't seen the last of these protests. For his emphasis on moderation, Hassan Rouhani has been described as the diplomatic sheikh. His skill is being put to the test by a belligerent American president, hostile neighbors, and protesters on the streets of Tehran. Bureau Report, WION.